Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us. And thank you, Diana, for the introduction. So this is one more of our conversations for the Plant Shift Initiative, whose idea is to bring discussion about plant-based innovation to academia, to university, to colleges, and starting with Northeastern, which is always forward. But the point is, how do we influence the world and resolve climate change and resolve many other problems through the adoption of a plant-based diet and revolutionize the food world, bringing it completely beyond the absurdity and nonsense of producing food through animals. And tonight we have a fantastic panel. The theme is disruption. And we have with us Miyoko Schinner, the founder of Miyoko's Creamery, about whom I will say more later. But if there's a true disruptor, she is the one, basically recreating the world of dairy without animals and all plant-based, but also bringing her revolution to other realms, always with the very clear goal and intention of protecting animals and respecting animals, putting them at the center of the entire philosophy. And Amy Trakinski, a disruptor in two fields. First, she started disrupting the legal field, bringing historical and unique and phenomenal legal cases forward that she'll tell us more about. She's been a lawyer for the animals for many years and involved in many important cases. And then she turned her attention and abilities to the world of investment, where she is disrupting again, investing in very innovative companies in an extraordinary way. And then we have Roger Lienhard, who is disruptor number one, I would say. He, as far as I know, he holds the record of having raised the highest amount of money for plant-based businesses ever in the world. And apart from that, he's a great advocate for the animals, a serial entrepreneur, and a creator of several companies that are changing the way the world is eating right now. So he's an investor in, I believe, over 100 companies now, and the creator of several whose products are literally all around the world, produced around the world, and eaten and consumed all around the world, and all with the same goal: removing animals from the food equation, because it doesn't make sense to have them. And so I would start from Miyoko, and what I would like to ask you is, tell us how did you have the idea of creating Miyoko's Creamery and creating those fantastic products? And one personal mention: the first time I tasted your butter, I knew the world was changing because it was better than dairy butter. It was extraordinary. So how did you get the first sparkle? Where did the idea come from in the beginning?
Well, hi, everybody, and thank you, Seba, for the introduction. And it's really great to connect with Roger and Amy as well again. I can say that Miyoko's Creamery was an overnight idea that was 30 years in the making. I've been a vegan for as long as 30 years, maybe longer. And prior to being a vegan, I was a huge butter and cheese aficionado. And that my diet consisted of basically heavy cream, rich European cheeses, and lots of butter in absolutely everything I made. I thought that was the good life. So after I became vegan, I had to deprive myself of the wonderful things in life for so many years. And I had this it was the holy grail for me. How was I going to reinvent these foods? So my journey over the last 30 years of entrepreneurship took me through various businesses, including restaurants, catering companies, as well as another natural food company making meat alternatives back in the 90s, before we even had meat, before people even knew the term meat alternative. But eventually, when I hit 50 years old, I thought, this is my bucket list. I must create a great vegan cheese. So I started dedicating serious time in my kitchen to learning the art of fermentation. I took cheese making classes to figure out how is dairy cheese made. And I just started thinking about the science of true cheese making and applying it to plant milks. And that this is how Miyoko's Creamery was born. It first started out with the publication of Artisan Vegan Cheese, which was the first book to come out in the world about actually making cheese out of plant milks using fermentation and traditional cheese making techniques. And eventually, a couple of years later, it just felt like I had to start another business. So that's how it was. That's how it came about.
And this one thing that already came up and that you mentioned again, and I think what happens is the four of us on this panel are aware that the model food production through animals is absolutely untenable, unsustainable, insane, wasteful, cruel, and everything for it. It's amazing how hard it is to explain this to the rest of the world. It's like being enlightened and something that everybody else seems to not to be aware of. And but products such as yours, I remember bringing your butter several years ago to a Michelin star restaurant in 3 Michelin star restaurant in Hong Kong. And my friend, the chef, Bombana, was absolutely shocked by how good it was. And when you bring people to realize that alternatives are not only the right way, but they can be better than the original, that's when you win the game. And jumping to a completely different subject, Amy, you started, because you're a lawyer, you started caring for animals many, many years ago, but dedicating your abilities to protecting them in some extraordinary legal cases. Can you mention one or two for our information? Because I know of some, but maybe you would want to start from there.
Sure. Let's see. Well, I can go back since we're talking about veganism and the farmed animals used for food. I'll talk about a case that's, wow, goes back to around 2000, 2001. And at the time, you won't be surprised to hear that cruelty cases were not being brought against people who were mistreating farmed animals. It was almost, it's by definition, especially in our current system, animals are suffering in the process of being made into food. So back in, it was like year 3 of our law practice, which we had decided, my former partner and I, to dedicate to the animals. We got a call from Farm Sanctuary and Gene Bauer. And Gene, as was his wont, was going around sort of walking into farms, even factory farms, and seeing what he could see. And sometimes he would have a camera with him. And on this occasion, Gene had been in New Jersey and he walked into a farm, at the time anyway, the largest egg producer in the Northeast United States. And what he saw was a huge battery egg operation, which everybody on this panel, understands to be a very horrific place. As we found out later, this facility had about 14 or 15 hen houses, which are basically windowless, huge sheds filled with battery cages, which again, everyone on this panel is all too familiar with. It's small cages crammed tight with chickens, hens, and we found out later that each of these sheds contained over 1 million birds. So you can imagine just how tightly they were packed in there. And Gene went in and was, his goal obviously was to expose this kind of thing. And he had a video camera and he took some footage, and we ended up bringing a case. There were, well, the specifics, not to go into too much detail, were this battery cage system was perfectly legal. Unfortunately, it's still legal today, decades later. But what Gene found were garbage bins basically filled with dead chickens who had been who were downed animals, as they called them, for whatever reason. They had died or were in poor shape and were killed. But on top of one of these piles of dead chickens, Jean found 2 live chickens. And those 2 hens ended up being the subject of a cruelty case we brought in New Jersey against this huge factory farm. Only because in New Jersey, uniquely, there's a private right of action to go into court and prosecute animal cruelty, among other quote unquote low level offenses.
And so you won the case.
We did. We won the case. The judge, and this was in the middle of farm country in New Jersey, and memorably in his decision, the judge equated throwing out these hens, who the farm, by the way, their defense was they humanely euthanized them by breaking their necks. Cervical dislocation is the term. And it wouldn't be in their business interest to, mistreat their animals, right? Happy, healthy animals are good producers, which we also know to be a fallacy. But anyway, we got a conviction. The judge equated throwing out these hens like this to throwing out a dog or a person. It was quite amazing language to hear from the court. And yeah, we had cruelty for years later. We would, because, in doing these cases, we would meet a lot of folks doing humane law enforcement, and it was a great opportunity. It wasn't top of mind to sort of go into farms and see what they could see in terms of how the animals were being treated, but this actually emboldened them to some extent, empowered them to start doing just that. And we would get wonderful emails and letters and phone calls of folks going in and charged with actually enforcing the cruelty laws.
And this is a good example.
I should add, it was reversed on appeal, but that's a whole other.
Well, that's how the world works. But this is a good example of how you stir the pot, you create innovation in fields where you don't expect it. You get a judgment, you bring up a case, and then more people follow. And the point is, disrupting a system of disinformation and ignorance and creating more information about what's really happening. But Roger, let me come to you for 1 second. So the way you operate, I find extraordinary. You have a goal, which is removing all animals from the food system, and you go about it with very big plans. And what's special is that you realize these plans, you make them happen. So tell us for 1 second how you started with Blue Horizon, the first idea, and how big it is now. You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm at a very noisy street. I hope you don't hear it here. Hi, Miyoko. I didn't say hi to you.
Hi, Roger.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. So yeah, I give you the elevator pitch. So I obviously do this not for very long time. Like Amy and you, Seba, you invest since much longer. I mean, in the game now since 7 years, but it feels like I have chosen a good timing, because that's when it took off, and after companies like Impossible, Miyoko, and Beyond Meat really made products that were fun, and not just trying to replicate the old product, but really were fun. And when I go, for example, to friends of mine, and I have a Miyoko spread, and they put it on the bread, they say, okay, it's maybe not identical to cheese, but it's the same fun. I can drink my red wine bottle with it, and it's the French baguette, the cheese on the bread, and the red wine bottle. So it gives me my old traditional feeling of eating cheese and bread and drinking red wine. So I was lucky to join the movement at the point where the products were ready for the mass market, and not just, let's say, for us, the vegan warriors that eat them anyways, to support the entrepreneur and not to eat the other product. So we would do it anyways. But I think since 5-6 years, the products are so good that everybody can eat them. And obviously, first I invested my own money to answer your question, Seba. That was a 500K here and $1 million there and 300K there. And it felt a little bit like philanthropy. But then when the products got better, I could see this is a business. We raised our first venture fund that was 222 million. Half of it is invested by now, but there was more demand of capital. And I learned from an old Asian friend I have, if there's a problem, throw money at it. Most of the time it solves the problem, if it can be solved with money. And I met hundreds of entrepreneurs the last few years, and they actually have proven that this is true. You need good entrepreneurs that get enough capital, and then they eventually will come up with a solution. And this is what our portfolio companies are doing. And by now we have raised over $1.1 billion and invested almost 90% of it into over 100 companies by now. And we will continue to do this. We see our job in first it was discovering the right products and companies, what we luckily did, and now it's really about explaining investors that this is a business. This is about saving animals, the first place. This is what drives me. This is also about producing healthier food for us humans, and it's also about fighting global warming. Of course, these are the three main arguments, and we are all lucky that the environmental argument is very strong and very widely entertained now. But it is also an amazing investment opportunity. I always ask people, if you were invested in Volkswagen, Ford, General Motors the last 10 years, or you bought Tesla, where did you make more money? Oh, okay, you're right. Good, let's pick something from our industry. If you have invested 5 years ago into General Mills or into Nestle or into Cargill, or you bought the Beyond Meat or Impossible shares, where have you made more money? So what people start to understand, and what we teach them every day, is that when you have a transformation from an old industry into a new industry, from a product that has a bad impact on the environment and us humans, to a product that has a positive impact on us humans and the environment, it's gonna happen. It's no question. Food is a $2 trillion market when it comes to animal protein that we need to disrupt and fully exchange and replace. And this is the opportunity. This is where we are today. And this is why, let's say, this first $1 billion raised and deployed was a milestone I always wanted to achieve, but now it feels like the starting line, and we will take it from here.
Fantastic. And that's really how you disrupt the system. You penetrate the system, you understand its needs, you create products that are better than the existing ones under many points of view, and you compete with them. And that's what you, Roger, are doing in so many respects. But Miyoko, I wanted to jump back to you because we were talking about legal cases, and you recently won a phenomenal legal case. Can you please tell us about it?
Sure. We're very proud. In December of 2019, we got a letter from the state of California, from the California Department of Food and Agriculture, that told us that we could not use the term butter. We also had to remove any images of livestock from our marketing materials and our website. We had a picture on our website. This was my favorite part, of a woman, a volunteer at the farmed animal sanctuary I started, called Rancho Compasión. But we had a picture of her hugging a cow. And we were told that we couldn't show that because images of livestock belong to the dairy industry, is what we were told. We had to also remove expressions such as dairy-free, lactose-free, revolutionizing dairy with plants, and hormone-free. I had known that other companies in California that were making so-called dairy replicas, as California would call it, had received similar letters, and they had just decided they didn't want to fight, and they complied. And that's not who I am. I've been a rebel at heart since I was young. And so with board approval, and I am forever grateful to our board that approved this and supported me, we sued the state of California on violating our First Amendment rights to free speech. Animal Legal Defense Fund partnered with us, providing excellent legal work. And in August of 2021, we won the court case. The previous year, we had won a preliminary injunction, but the final injunction was in August of 2021, when a United States District Court ruled in our favor that consumers were not confused, as the state had alleged, and that we could continue to use the term vegan butter And so I believe that it set a precedent not only for butter, but for the entire dairy category, including cheese. And hopefully this will help other companies as well. I want to just state that we didn't fight this just because we wanted to keep the picture of Angel, the cow, on the website, or because we wanted, yes, it would have been very expensive to have to redo the packaging, but we fought it because it is our right. We are in a period of transformation of the food system. Foods are changing, and what we call foods, the nomenclature has to evolve along with the evolution of food. Language has always evolved. What we call foods today are not what humans call foods 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago. So language that reflects food has always evolved. And right now, unfortunately, we have an infrastructure of the incumbent industry that is pushing back very, very hard because they're beginning to feel the impacts of what vegan investors and entrepreneurs are doing to the marketplace. But we have to force this shift along. We have to force along the shift in how we express these products as well, because that nomenclature is such a huge part of the future success of the adoption of these products.
Absolutely. And this is what I call disruption, just revolutionizing a system, the use of the terms, and fighting back against an industry that wants to keep things the way they are, because that's what their interest is, and it goes against the interest of everyone on the planet. And and also there's an issue. It's not just bringing these products to all the people who have not tried them, but talking about important rights. Amy, you fought a case where the point was the food that prisoners were provided, where they were deprived of the choice of eating food that was in accordance with their ethics. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So this was in New York City, and there were a bunch of activists who were part of the Shack initiative. This was years ago. And what Shack was doing was trying to shut down a very notorious animal testing lab. So during one of the actions here in New York City, there were some arrests, and some activists went to jail and were being held at Rikers Island pending trial. And we got word, actually at the time, from PETA, who was very supportive of these kinds of initiatives, as you can imagine, that these basically kids, they're very young, were not, and all were vegan, and they were not being given access to vegan food at Rikers Island. So for the most part, what they had a commissary, in addition to, I guess, the regular meals, there was a commissary where folks being held could purchase peanut butter and bread and that kind of thing. But oftentimes those items were out of stock. So anyway, we brought suit in the Southern District of New York in federal court. And the basis of our lawsuit was that these 3 young people were being, their First Amendment rights to practice their religion was being violated. That we felt was probably the best approach. At the time, sort of just arguing these are my ethical beliefs wasn't going to cut it. And all 3 happened to be Jewish or half Jewish. And we went to court, and actually with a terrific person, Richard Schwartz, who's been very active in the movement over the years. Jewish Veg is the name of the organization he founded. It had a different name at the time. But anyway, he connected us to 10 rabbis of all different stripe, from Orthodox to Lubavitcher to conservative to the former chief rabbi of Haifa, and all were vegan, and all said that when the Messiah comes, we will all be vegan, and that veganism is the messianic kashrut, as they put it. And we were able to submit these affidavits along with our papers, and we're able to make the argument that this.
How did it end?
ended by unfortunately the case became moot because we got two of them out. They took a plea, and one of them was sent actually to an upstate prison awaiting trial. So the judge dismissed it, but she was very intrigued by the whole thing. And again, you know, during my, well, I should say, all my years as an activist, whether it's as a lawyer, even as an investor, I consider that just wearing another hat for the animals. You know, these are all opportunities. All of our work is an opportunity to educate. So, you know, you bring delicious Miyoko cheese to a dinner. It's an opportunity to educate people that you don't have to harm animals. You don't have to give up your favorite foods.
Which is exactly why these conversations are happening within Northeastern University, which again is one of the colleges in the US that innovates in most ways, and has decided to bring this conversation to the attention of all the students and faculty and everybody else. And Roger, let me jump back to you. So when I know you are a true disruptor, because I know the way you think, and you really want to subvert the way things work. So one example that strikes me as incredible is you were looking at the food industry in general and thinking of meat, which of course is the most devastating and wasteful, or one of the very wasteful and devastating industries in food. But instead of going the way that everybody did, replacing burgers, you chose a different path. Can you tell us about that?
I mean, I was a little bit late to the game, as I mentioned before. So burgers was all around the place. Cheese was all around the place. So chicken, I didn't find chicken so much, and it was during a time where I spent most of my time between Europe and Asia, and they eat much more chicken than burgers. And I felt like, maybe we should focus a little bit more on chicken. Burger is already covered, kind of. And I also don't want to run directly into competition with the first initiatives I launched myself. And the second part was also like what Miyoko experienced with her branding, where everybody tries to scrutinize her and put the brakes on. I can see with the burgers when it comes to ingredients. So you try to do something good, and then people find another mistake. And the burgers that are on the market, most of them, let's say the high-tech products, they have quite a long ingredients list. And this is obviously a question of time. First, you need to meet text and texture, and then when taste and texture is good, then you bring the price point down. And when you have achieved that too, then you can start taking stuff out of the product and make it more and more healthy. And a bleeding burger is just really difficult to replicate. When you look at chicken products, that's much easier. We have now companies that have 4 ingredients, where you really talk about edible oil, pea protein, fiber, and isolate and water, and that's it. And you can make a pretty good chicken product out of it. And this is why that's a product category we try to focus on a little bit, because we already start with a product on a nice price level, but also a product that is pretty clean, that is not highly processed and doesn't have a lot of ingredients in it. So we have a better argument when we compare the product, and we have meat on the left side and our chicken product made out of plants on the right side. We already start from a very good platform, I would say.
But I guess also when you're trying to disrupt the entire food system, you aim at the big targets. And am I wrong thinking that chicken is the most consumed meat on the planet at the moment?
It is the most consumed meat, and it will be, because more and more people figure out that red meat maybe is not the most healthiest product. And bacon sizzling in the pan, it already looks unhealthy. So maybe you want to stop there first. And all my friends that I try to convince and veganize, they usually would come and say, Roger, I just stopped eating red meat, or at least I eat less red meat. So even in my history, this was the first step. You figured out red meat. You can feel it in the body after a steak. You just don't feel good. So that's the first thing you stop eating. And chicken is by the consumer that still eats meat and consumes dairy. Chicken is perceived as the healthier product. When you look at people that do bodybuilding and run marathon, they will tell you, I reduced red meat, I reduced milk, and I drink almond milk now, and I eat chicken. And they think they're much healthier, and they are. So that's why when you talk about plant-based chicken products, it is not only the case that they are much healthier, but they also get perceived as the more healthy food. And we are talking to a young generation that does not only want to save the planet and fight global warming, they also are conscious about their own body, and you want to offer a product that is healthier.
Excellent.
Can I just jump in and just make a comment following on what Roger said? You know, now as people are becoming more aware of the environmental consequences of beef, there's also a risk that they're going to switch to chicken, to consuming chicken. So it's a road we have to sort of walk to try to make sure that doesn't happen or provide alternatives.
And it happens, Amy. I can confirm that I work with big chicken producers. I use them as our distribution partners. So working with the devil, let's put it that way. And they're not suffering from demand. So demand for chicken meat from the bone, so the old version of chicken, let's put it that way, is still skyrocketing. So it's not that they get disrupted from a total volume standpoint at the moment. Our market share of the plant-based movement is still very, very small. They still increase their sales each year, but they're getting more disrupted by COVID cases. They get disrupted by more legislation that gets put on their balance sheet. We will do it with a price point in the future, but it's true what you say. If people move from red meat, they first move to chicken from the bone. So our push is obviously that we tell them, why not just go to chicken plant-based? And the products are so good. I grill them here in Montecito on my grill. So the plant-based chicken is undistinguishable from the real thing, especially when you put it on the grill.
Fantastic. And now just reminding everyone, we're guests of the engineering department here in Northeastern. And so I want to ask you, Miyoko, when you started thinking about producing plant-based cheese, obviously you had to figure out techniques and technology. And what role does technology play in what you do now, and how important is it?
Well, I think there is a huge focus on the different technologies that are emerging today. All you have to do is search industry news, and you can learn about approaches via precision fermentation, cell-based, as well as plant-based. And when in the plant-based sector, the best known technology is what has been adopted by over 90% of the plant-based vegan cheese companies today. And this is a very old processed cheese technology, and it's simply an emulsification of oil and starch with natural flavors. Same base, oil and starch, and then you add either Gouda flavor or cheddar flavor or mozzarella flavor, whatever you want. You cook it in a big cooker, and it's poured into these boxes, and it's aged for about a month, and then it's sliced and shredded. That is a very well-established technology that is used by most of the companies for most of the products that you see available. And I think the challenge is going to be that as we cross over to the flexitarian population, to non-vegans who, I have to say, vegans are willing to eat anything. We're so desperate for cheese that it doesn't matter if it's devoid of nutrients. We'll take that slice of, pure fat and starch cheese on our burger. But we have to realize that flexitarians are going to be more demanding, and they're going to be looking for, there is a perception that plant-based products are healthier. And so if they're reading the packet, the ingredients on the back of one of these packets and realize that there's zero nutrition, zero protein, it's just all oil and starch, they're going to be less inclined. And you're hearing that more and more people saying, I was told to get off of cheese, but it looks like my vegan cheese isn't any better for me. And it doesn't have any protein. And why would I want to give it to my kid, et cetera? And so we really have to be cognizant of the fact that just like the meat alternative companies that have been very cognizant all along of the protein, the nutrient factor of needing to put better quality ingredients in the vegan meats. We have to do the same for vegan cheeses. And so this is where a lot of the so-called small artisan producers that are doing things in a smaller scale than we are, have an important role, because they are making cheese out of plant milks like we are. And that means that our products are going to have a little bit of nutrition. What we're doing right now is we are combing the world for the most nutrient dense plant milks that we can make. And we're focusing on a couple of seeds that are very interesting. There's no products made with one particular seed yet. We're launching a cottage cheese in the second quarter of next year, hopefully, that has 10 grams of protein per serving and only 5 ingredients. There's no added oils, there's no added protein powders. It's simply from the milk itself. And I think this is where the technology has to advance to a point where we can begin to attract omnivores who will say, you know what, a plant-based cheese actually is better for me than the dairy-based cheese, because not only does it have protein and maybe some fiber, but it doesn't have any cholesterol, it doesn't have pus and all this other stuff in it. I think there's a question about precision fermentation and cell-based, and how important are those, and will they attract people? But before we get into that, and I'd love to hear from everybody, what I really would like to understand is something that Roger was saying earlier. I don't know that people are looking for an exact replica of either meat or dairy. I don't think it has to taste exactly like beef or exactly like cheddar. Just like goat cheese is different from cow's milk cheese. We can create a new line of cheeses that provide the same sense of satisfaction and experience, that you can have your glass of red wine with some cheese. You can turn a cheese into fondue or whatever. And it can be made from plant milk. So we can have 3 different categories. We can have cow's milk cheese, goat milk cheese, and plant milk cheese. And because there are so many different kinds of plants, far more than there are goats or cows in the world, we can open up the world to exploring a variety of different plant milk cheeses, and have cashew based cheese, pumpkin seed based cheese, legume based cheese, oat based cheese, and they can all have their own personalities, their own styles. And this is, to me, the beginning of a new evolution of food, where we're creating a new category of cheese that will perform like cheese in the traditional applications, but they may not be exactly identical. And I don't think they need to be. I think consumers are more flexible than that. And that's what I found more with flexitarians, where they say, wow, it's not exactly like cheddar, but I can use it just like cheddar and it's delicious. And that's what we want them to say, is to say, this is delicious. And so my question is, do we really need to be an exact replica? How much is that argument true, that it has to be exactly like cheddar, and that's why we need precision fermentation or cell-based? I'm not convinced of that argument.
Roger, what do you think about that?
I agree 50% and I disagree 50%. So because I obviously try to catch everybody, when I talk about the first 50% that are closer to where I am come from, they say, give me a different cheese. Yes, give me the goat cheese, give me the cashew cheese, give me the almond cheese, give me the whatever cheese that is not made from an animal. That's okay. That works. So for half of the market, you just need to have a nice spread. And it doesn't matter if it comes from the cow, the goat, the cashew nuts, or potatoes, maybe what I learned last time with Miyoko. So that's okay. You have this target group. You also have the target group in the market that actually prefers to eat an avocado toast or to eat lentils without any cheese or chicken product in it. When people ask me, do we need to replicate all these animal products? No, we don't need to. The most healthiest product on the planet is whole food. It's fresh fruits, fresh vegetable. It's water. Just drink water with anything in it. That's the healthy product. But when it comes to convenience, when it comes to tradition, when it comes to stuff that people are used to, also an older generation, it helps when you want to catch them, just to give them the same. You want to change the chicken nugget at McDonald's and Burger King, even without needing to explain. When you look at the marketing of Burger King, about 1.5 years ago, the Burger King chicken nugget became the Burger King nugget. It doesn't say chicken on it. I don't want to go into the reasons, but the point is, it's just a nugget, and the nugget can be made from a chicken, it can be made from a pork, from a beef product, or maybe from pea or soy protein. It's just a nugget, and you happen to dump it into a sauce, is it tomato ketchup or mustard or whatever. So when it comes to a nugget, for example, you just want to replace the feeling of eating a nugget, and it almost doesn't matter what is in the breading, because people don't know it anyway. Also, with a real chicken nugget, you don't want to know what is in it. Probably not the best part of the chicken, if there is something like a best part. And that said, is when I look at fish, and this is maybe why the plant-based seafood hasn't taken off so well. It's very difficult to replicate salmon. But you don't need salmon in a sandwich. But if you want to catch the people that really want to have this very heavy, rich, fatty omega-3 oil feeling when they bite in their sandwich, you need to replicate the old product in a way where people are satisfied. And this is why I say half of the market, they are happy with just a different product or the real whole food. And then there's maybe a market, maybe it's 30% and not half, that we try to trick with the perfect replica, just to get it over it, not to need to argue with them and to force feed them the better product, kind of.
One thing that I've learned in this sector is that there is not one winning approach. There are many approaches to all the strategies, and you tackle the problem from many sides and make as many people happy as you can. But I was intrigued by what you were saying before, Miyoko, when you were discussing creating a new category. This is a typical disruptor's way of thinking. You know, you're rethinking the world of cheese, and this is phenomenal. I love seeing disruptors like you at work, taking a completely different angle and view of something that has been there for hundreds of years. And Amy, what is the most, in your opinion, and I'm sorry for the surprise question, but the most disruptive company that you have invested in with your hat of an investor, or anyway, one
most disruptive? Wow, I don't know if I can choose one. We have a portfolio of about 40 companies, so yeah, I don't want to play favorites, but we certainly have, I think, invested in a whole bunch that are disruptive. One that pops to mind, just because we haven't discussed this topic yet, but Wild Earth is a pet food company. And, a lot of people think that, well, pet food is just a byproduct of the human animal food system. And to some degree that's true, but in large measure, it's actually not true. And, billions more animals die to be fed to the animals we live with and love in our homes. So it's, and a lot of that meat is actually very poor quality. So there's a lot of problems in the pet food industry. So that would be one. Wild Earth is a plant-based pet food company.
Very innovative, right? Because the technology behind making that perfect food that is complex. What I find fascinating about Wild Earth is that dogs really like it. They prefer it to regular dog food. So,
and a lot of friends actually, anecdotally, and I know Wild Earth keeps better track of this than I do, but even friends of mine have reported that that Wild Earth has finally cured all the kinds of allergy problems that their animals were suffering their whole lives. And suddenly, the skin's clearing up, the digestive issues clear up. So there's all kinds of good reasons. People think dogs are carnivores. They're actually not. I mean, they're omnivores, just like we are, and can be perfectly healthy. I think we're all longtime vegans here. I think I might be the vegan baby of this group. I've been vegan almost 27 years, but I have a feel, Sebastiano, I know you've been, I think, longer than that. And Miyoko, You too.
No, less vegetarian longer than that, but vegan shorter than you. But
Certainly, I mean, we're examples that one can, lead a active, healthy life and leaving animals out of it.
Absolutely. And I just realized there are some questions in the Q&A that I was completely ignoring, and so I'm going to turn some to you, and please choose or maybe I'll choose one of you to answer. But Eric is asking about innovation in universities, and he's talking about a program in Colorado, a protein project that CU Boulder out. And so his question is, what's the big next step to level up what's being done at the university level? But I guess this is a good question for our friends at Northeastern, and maybe we'll leave it at that and wait for them to answer that. So here's a special question. I think this goes straight to Roger, so if you can answer. But we're seeing a lot of investment at Vevolution for alternative dairy fermentation and Salag startups. What are you eyeing as an investor for 2022 opportunities? What's the main focus, Roger, if there's one?
Yeah, there's my focus is first of all to invest in all the available technologies. So we invest in plant-based fermentation and in cultured meat technologies. That said is if I want to generate a return, the return I can trust and prove. At the moment, my main focus goes to plant-based and fermentation technologies that can produce products that are sellable now. One thing is that you invest in a lab and in infrastructure, and hopefully they will come up with a product that scales in the future. That's a little bit the world of cultured meat, where we are still very, very early days. And then you have a world of plant-based fermentation, where I prefer to invest because the products are here. You can test them, you can ask the consumer, and I understand honestly the process a little bit better. When I look at cultured meat, I still scratch my head and say, who has the better technology? And everybody claims, no, it's us. No, it's us. No, we have the much better technology. So that's a little bit try and error. So if investors are in this call now and ask themselves where to put money, I would at the moment not risk my money for the crazy moonshots and put it into plant-based companies where you can try the product and ask yourself, do I like it? Ask your parents if they like it. If they say yes to, maybe it's a good investment.
Yeah. And so am I right thinking, again, we're guests of the engineering department, am I right thinking that every aspect of this innovation is going to require a lot of engineers, and that maybe it would be a good idea to prepare for this total revolution in the food industry? And I know in companies you invest in, Amy, all the technologies are used. Miyoko, you use them firsthand, and you see, we discussed this, how improvements in a technology that is available would be useful to you. Imagine having 2 or 3 phenomenal engineers creating machines for you, like Christy Lagalli has done for Rebellious Foods, for instance. And Roger, I'm sure you see in all the companies you've invested in, if they had more engineers available, they'd be happy. Am I right?
Sure. We need talents. Yeah, we need talents. It's like in the software business, you need coders. You need people that come up with a better code. You need tons of them. Competition. They learn from each other. Same goes here. We need engineers that are good in fermentation. We need people that are more focusing on bioscience and cultured meat. And we need people that build better machines. The machines we have today in the industry are still kind of something we take from another industry and tweak it a little bit. But we need more people like Christy Lagalli that come up with totally new ideas.
A mechanical engineer, okay? Let it be known to everyone. And she's great. And Miyoko, here's another question for you, because you already challenged the status quo with your phenomenal legal case. But so the point is, disruption is needed in many sectors. And do you see that in what you're doing and in the technology of cheese in general, there will be further steps in let's say, in innovation and in technology that could bring even more advancement? And is that something that you're focusing?
Oh my gosh. If you think about it, we've had 2,000 years to figure out just how cow's milk works in making cheese. We just got started with different plant milks. So for example, I'm going to give you one of our microbiologists found that just by using a specific bacteria, we could prevent oil separation in our butter, even if it's left at room temperature, just by changing the culture. That's it. And so there's so much research that has to be done. Every single plant milk has a different protein, fat, carbohydrate makeup, and each of the proteins are different. You know, some might have more albumin than globulin, and there's just so many different ways, and each of these proteins react differently. All the fatty acids, all the break down differently over the aging process, depending on what enzymes or bacteria are used. So we have so much research we're doing on just singular milks and exposing them to different bacteria and enzymes, and seeing how do they react under certain conditions, applying heat or cold and all of this. And we're beginning to understand this. So if we've got tens of thousands of plants in the planet, you know, on the planet here, I mean, there's a lot of research to do. And we're at the very, very, very beginning of this research. So just in the plant kingdom alone, there's so much deep research that can be done. And what we're trying to do is focus on the ones that are the most nutrient dense, that have already exhibited properties of things like coagulation, good flavor development under certain conditions, et cetera. And so our new, you know, what we're going to be producing in the future will not be just on cashews, but on a variety of other ingredients. We already started last year with oats and legumes and things, but we're really digging deep into some very promising seeds that we have found. And so, yes, I think there's just a lot of technology within those kingdoms in playing around with enzymes and bacteria and heat and other processes. The other thing that I'll add is that we've cobbled together facilities, production facilities with existing equipment, but there is no equipment line, there is no production line that's designed for making products of our kind. And this is where someone like Christine Lagali, you know, who engineered a new kind of extruder, I believe, would become extremely valuable. I think there is a role for engineers to play in helping develop the ideal processes for some of these technologies as they develop.
Fantastic. And again, you know, this is really inspiring for student engineers. You know, the room for innovation and for creating new machinery, new technologies, and new processes is infinite. Let's remind everyone, we are revolutionizing the entire realm of food, so everything will have to be rethought. I have visited production plants where everything is being rethought because the processes are different, the ingredients are different, everything is different and better, by the way. And so one last question as we're drawing to a close. Give me all of you a 30-second answer, or what's next in your disruptor target. And Amy, we're going to start with you. What is in your target now, and what do you think is the next step where disruption can be applied?
Do you mean specifically company-wise, or just how we're sort of?
Anything you have in mind? You're disrupting the world of food.
Okay,
so what's the next important target?
You know, I'd like to actually just dovetail off the question about whether we need to be eating these doppelganger foods, you know, these the uncanny valley foods of the plant-based world, where unless it's exactly like its animal counterpart, then somehow it's not, you know, as interesting. And I agree with Miyoko. I think that's actually selling the consumer short. And I think consumers are very open to novel experiences. And I'd like to think of a lot of, and on the other hand, I agree with Roger. I think these products, the products that are as similar as possible to existing animal products, are important to many people because maybe in their minds they think they're not interested in switching to a plant-based diet, and maybe they think it's too challenging and they could never do it and they could never give up the burger or the cheese or the hot dog or whatever it is. But I think once people start down a path, I'd like to, in other words, I guess I'm more optimistic, shockingly, after all these years, that people have the ability to change. And I think these products, if they can help create a bridge for people to get to another place where they're willing to eat vegetables, beans and seeds and nuts and all kinds of wonderful foods, wouldn't that be amazing? Because I think our food system's broken, and I honestly don't think that just substituting out crappy products for crappy products should be the goal here. And I just, I kind of fight the cynicism that sometimes creeps in because it's a huge problem. But so that's the direction that I would like to see this whole space go, where in 20, 30 years, where the system looks completely different. It's healthier, it's more sustainable, it's more humane. And maybe there won't be a hamburger on our plate. Would that be so terrible?
Well, that's a disruptive thought, the changing that and changing the habits. And Miyoko, what's your next target? But stay within the 30 seconds. What is your next target on the disruption list? We just mention one thing that you're tackling that is obsessing you, like it happens to disruptors.
I would agree with Amy. I think we have to disrupt the human spirit. I have a lot more faith in humans in general, and I believe we have to see a transformation of the human spirit. So to change the perception of animals not being food, and we have to basically evolve the human being. And that's what I'm working on. Activism is a huge part of everything that we do.
Fantastic. Makes a lot of sense. And Roger, what's next on your disruption list?
I have two I have two initiatives, and the one initiative goes into the ballpark of Miyoko, where I believe in people. So this is a 100-fold our media reach. I work on building a platform that we can talk to hundreds of millions of consumers and educate them that plant-based is just better for all of us, including the planet. And the second initiative goes into the other ballpark where I said, and some people just don't want to learn. And this is increasing scalability and production capacity so we can make the products so real and so cheap that just people vote with their wallet. So I really target on these two kinds of consumer, the more conscious one and the people that want to learn and educate them more through media and reach. And the other ones that just don't want to know, we try to give them products that are really affordable and cheaper than the old version that came from the bone. So these two topics.
Wonderful. Well, this is a great way to close, and I think very inspiring for everyone listening. And I want to thank Northeastern University again, and Jane for creating the Plant Shift Initiative, because she started the whole thing. And I'm very grateful for the hospitality, and I'll give the word back to Diana. And Amy, Miyoko, and Roger, don't leave yet. There will be a short conversation afterwards. Thank you.